Clinician, and you're watching Case for Bass.
I'm Anthony Gethers.
And I'm Greg Weiss.
And we are the hosts of Case for Bass.
Fantastic interview planned for our bass community, and we want to welcome everybody who's watching and signing on. And if this is your first time watching us, you're welcome to the Case for Bass, where we talk to working bass players about their inspiration, their beginnings, and where they're heading. And today we have a fantastic special guest. I met Patrick online, and I want to introduce Patrick Pfeiffer. And he's a outstanding bass player. He's got a rich pedigree, and I can't wait to hear more from him. And we're going to start this off with Anthony and the first question.
First and foremost, round of applause for Patrick Pfeiffer, bass player, author, composer, clinician, and of course he's the author of the second and third edition of Bass Playing for Dummies. So let's give him a bit of round of applause for making an appearance here. Thank you very much, Pat.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, my first question to you is this, very simple. Did the bass choose you, or did you choose the bass?
Well, that's a good question, and I've been thinking about that since I knew I'd be coming on, and I saw that you were asking the question. It's really, let me backtrack a little. It's like I come from a German family, and one of the requirements was, besides your general studies as a kid, to be a member of that family. Otherwise, I don't know, they kick you out or something. I don't know. But anyway, you have to learn one musical instrument and one athletic discipline. You know, you can pick whatever you want, but that was a requirement. So I started out with, believe it or not, xylophone, as a 3-year-old.
Whoa.
Oh, yeah. It's just like playing the Kindersinfonie from Haydn. And then
I have to laugh at it for 1 second, because how often does anyone hear about starting off on a xylophone? Well, Greg and I obviously grew up in America. You hear drums. Back then it was a flutophone. The next thing you should have brought up was the kazoo. I think I might have been just as impressed.
Yeah, recorder was the big one.
Needless to say, it didn't stick. It's a very fuzzy memory. It was very early in childhood. So I then moved on to the piano. I really have to say I hated it. And I did not get along, but it was a requirement, so I kept at it, And then around 1970, just as the Beatles were splitting up, there was this big wave of Beatlemania sweeping the world really once more. I came across the movie Help, and saw Beatles, and there was this cat in there who was scoring with the chicks left and right. I mean, this guy was just, it was like unbelievable. And me entering my teens, or just about to, I thought, man, if I wanna get lucky with the girls, I'm going to have to do what he does. And then I found out this guy was Paul McCartney. He was playing bass. So it says it was a no-brainer. It was a bass,
Yeah.
man. Of course, I was playing the wrong instrument all along. It was like, so once I figured that out, I badgered my parents. Look, he said, I can pick the instrument. I have to play one. That's fine. I want to play bass. Of course, I didn't tell them why. It's like bass sounds like that's the thing for me. It's like, no doubt. So I ended up getting a bass. It was actually passed down to me. There was a tradition in Germany that when an elder bass player buys a new bass, he passes on his instrument to the younger generation. I was the recipient of one of those basses.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. It was a colleague of my father's. His name was Rainer Hoffmann. And he gifted me my first bass. It was an upright bass.
Oh, wow.
And I fell in love with the instrument. And it's just like, so it didn't help me with the girls, but
Not the upright.
Yeah,
Not the upright, but
I think you'd get more girls with the xylophone compared to the upright.
compared to the upright.
But so it was the upright, and then he saw something in me, and he convinced my parents to say, look, it's like, if this guy is really pursuing music, he is going to have to learn electric as well, or in addition to, or whatever. It's just like, but it's important. So he started me out on electric too. Then we ended up getting an electric for myself, and that was it. I disappeared into the basement playing music, playing Beatles songs and Elvis and Beach Boys and the works,
Oh, wow.
And I mean, this was the 70s, you have to remember. So
we call that a deep dive.
It was a deep dive. And then the thing was in Germany, at the time, a very traditional country, and I was starting to look toward a career in music. I was going to be either a pilot like my father, who flew for Lufthansa, or a musician or a bass player, And I was really undecided between the two up to about when I was 15 or so, and then I outgrew the height limit for a pilot. I ended up being 6'7". Actually, it was 6'9", but I started shrinking, so now it's 6'7". It's fine.
When did you reach your peak of? Because obviously you're 6'7". Like you're probably one of the world's tallest bass players. When did you reach that height? How old were you when you were at maximum height?
Well, at maximum height was like in my 20s and 30s and stuff, and that was about 6'9". And then now I am 62. So I have settled into 6'7", and it's more than enough. I still have trouble buying shoes and long T-shirts and that kind of stuff, so it's fine.
It must have made an upright bass a lot easier to play over 6 feet than somebody like me who's like 5'8", and I'm looking at this thing and I'm looking up, and you're looking down, and scale wise, it's probably more like a cello than a double bass.
Yeah, the thing, all that stuff didn't really occur to me. It was like I didn't know enough to know the difference or anything like that. I became hip to all things bass, really. It's like after I developed myself as a bass player, like playing, like I said, Beatles and whatever I can, the commercial stuff. I put out my feelers, and I really didn't know anything about bass per se, except how to play it. I played by ear for the most part, actually for all of the part, and took tunes by ear and all this stuff. And then I inquired in Germany. I said, look, if I want to pursue this, can I study this on a university level or conservatory level? And the answer was no. At the time, no. You are not going to be a contemporary bass player. We have always trained classical musicians.
Yeah, there's no category for popular music, especially in electric bass.
Well, let me ask you this. Couldn't you have gone, because obviously, look, Germany is the home of many classical composers. Couldn't you have gone in the way where you studied classical to learn how to read music? Because I know that German bow, for instance, French bow.
Yes.
Didn't have any of that available at the time?
It would have been possible, except that I really didn't enjoy classical. I felt it was, to me, it's a beautiful branch of music. It's a beautiful genre, but it wasn't me. It's like I'm free. I create groove. I create music. I try to enrich the repertoire of bass with stuff that is new and fresh. So classical music to me was an interpretation of a piece, and that's fine. It's perfectly legit. It's just not me, you know. So I didn't want to spend the time on classical music when I knew this wasn't going to be it. I'd rather concentrate on the stuff that I was truly going to do. And the closest thing to me was the jazz genre. So in '78, my father was transferred to the States. I was 16 years old at the time. And I skipped, the school systems are very different between Germany and America. So I skipped 3 years of school, ended up in my senior year in high school.
Can I interrupt you for just 2 seconds? Just be honest and say your system's better than ours. Your system's.
We can accept that.
I can accept that coming from Germany.
I'll accept that.
Yeah, yours is much better than our school system.
But,
because your school
the socialization of having 3 extra years could have been monumental in your bass playing.
Absolutely. You may continue.
It helped. It would have, like I said, the two systems did not line up at all at the time. So I ended up in my senior year in high school, and they had, lo and behold, a jazz band. They had a stage. Actually, had 2. I ended up in the number 1 band, and the first tune that I played, coming to the States, coming into the Thunderbird High School big band in Phoenix, Arizona.
Oh, wow.
Theme from Barney Miller.
Yeah. Chuck Rainey.
Greatest thing, absolutely. It was the greatest thing at the whole big band, and I loved it. I was hooked after that. So it's like, then I found out that at Arizona State University, they had a jazz degree, which was the closest thing to contemporary jazz.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, and it was beautiful. It was a great degree. It was great instruction, and I made the most of it. You know, so after high school, I went to ASU.
That makes you an official Sun Devil.
That's right, Sun Devil. Well, here's this. I was for my undergrad work was ASU, which made me a Sun Devil, and then I knew I wasn't done yet because I was headed for New York City, and if you enter the scene in New York, you have to be ready. You get one shot at it, and even then, it takes you like 5 years of being there and proving yourself until you get accepted into the fold of musicians
True.
New York.
No, technically we're from New York and we are New Yorkers. And,
New York is very unforgiving as a scene.
It
really is.
You get you shot
there's
at
no
it.
fake it till you make it. You got to just jump on and grip.
Precisely.
Hold on.
And get the right people to like you.
That's right. Well, that's it. Well, that was my challenge, is because it's just I always had trouble like getting people to like me, because it's like being an ex-German, especially. It's just like I just kind of stand there in social gatherings. I don't say much. I'm kind of oversized, so it's just like people don't come and talk to me. So it really had to be good in order to make.
Well, they call it schmoozing around here.
And I did not establish myself as that, like, you know. But so after ASU, I was accepted into the master's program at New England Conservatory.
Nice.
And that was a killer program. I got to speak with Miroslav Vitus, who was the original member of Weather Report, which was a predecessor of Jaco, and all that. And they really pushed me into a whole new realm. I played in George Russell's big band, and whatever ensembles I could get my hands on. And then after I got my master's at New England Conservatory, then I ended up in New York. And then it was still a rough road. Was coming to knock on my door. Hey, you're in town. We've got all these gigs for you. It just didn't happen that way. It was basically what the same thing as I tell all my students. You show up at the jam sessions. You don't bring your instrument at first. You kind of psych everything out, see what's what. You meet these people, you support them. It's like I pay the entrance fee. It's no problem, even if I don't get to play. I want to support them. I want to show that I have an interest in their playing, and not just in showing off my playing and stuff like that. All that stuff is important, and all that stuff is noticed by people who play, because it is a supportive environment. It is a community that is supportive of each other. Yeah, it's very, very important, because if we don't do it, nobody else will.
No.
So
That's true.
yeah, so I ended up in New York, and then I was called in because somebody needed a warm body. You know, and this is exactly
It's how it starts.
the situation that
It's
presents.
how it starts.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, and the guy who recommended it, somebody met me at the deli that I was working at the time to eat, and he knew I played bass. He recommended me to somebody who needed a warm body. That somebody turned out to be William Gallison, who's a killer harmonica player in New York. We ended up playing at the 55 bar, which was
Love that bar.
hub. And I remember, like, my favorite tune of that night was "Mercy, Mercy, Mercy," and that was when I had my entrance into the New York scene. When you're ready for that gig and you're doing a good job, and then people recommend you, and all of a sudden, you don't stop working.
That's it.
So it says, like,
You don't say no, and you're going to do 2-3 shows a day sometimes 4 or 5 days a week.
Yeah.
And the New York City scene is the the universe of bass in the United States. There's so many places to play and availabilities, and I'm hoping and I'm assuming that at that time, this is way before the internet came around. This is way before electric music. And what I want to ask is, when you did that first song with "Mercy, Mercy Me," did you feel everything about wanting to play this when you were a kid all come out?
I heard it's, by the way, it's "Mercy, Mercy, Mercy." There is a "Mercy, Mercy Me" also.
Yes.
I apologize for the mistake.
Just wanted to, like, to anybody who's listening, it's "Mercy, Mercy, Mercy." It's Joe Zawinul composition.
Okay.
And the that is the bass part, yeah. I was familiar with the tune, but only vaguely, and then just later it started showing up again and again. It's one of my favorites. It's a beautiful composition. So that's what happened.
What bass were you playing at the time?
What bass? I was a I was a 4-stringer to the core under the I thought what's good enough for Jaco is good enough for me, and, all that stuff, and found my way gradually, not just to the 6-string, but to the 6-string fretless. So just kind of like, okay, if Jaco was still around, would he, if he still has that fretless sound, would he end up on 6-string? So I was just trying to take it to another branch,
How many 6-string? I mean, there's 6-string. There's you. There's Steve Bailey.
Mohini Day.
Mohini Day doesn't play 6-string fretless.
Yeah,
The fretless players.
Yeah, Alain Caron plays 6-string fretless, and a lot. In fact, he's a beautiful player. And so there are a few.
Andy West from the Dregs.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's a fretted 6-string, but yes, he does play that. Mike Pope plays a fretted 6-string also. They're all wonderful players.
Les Claypool, 6-string fretless.
There you go. Yeah.
So you eventually ended up to the fretless. I want to circle back to Germany, because you mentioned that you were growing up, that obviously Paul McCartney was a big influence. Were there any local German talent? Because you mentioned that you had a bass that was handed down to you within your family, an upright bass. But were there any local German musicians that resonated with you besides? Because obviously you think of Paul McCartney, he's one of these global players, global writer, composer, and everything else. But was there any local talent that caught your attention growing up as well?
It really didn't, and not because there wasn't any. I'm sure there was, but I was young. I was inexperienced. I wasn't really too aware of anything else. All I was concerned with was my own little bubble
Okay.
of bassdom, and it only like as the years went on did I recognize, okay, there's some good stuff there, But my biggest influence, I had a wonderful teacher named Hilmar Stanger, who would come in and he would actually teach the entire band. He would teach all of us to play songs, and we did like the classic jazz, like Basin Street Blues, and any kind of blues stuff. A lot of the Dixieland jazz, then Beatles tunes. Just all across the board. He was my main influence at the time as my teacher.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. You mentioned that your family earlier said that you had to choose an instrument and also do athletics. What were you doing?
What was the athletic? We always want to know.
I know what you're thinking. I know you're thinking basketball has to be it.
Actually, no.
Actually, I was thinking soccer.
I was thinking either soccer or rugby. Believe it or not, those were the two that would cross my mind.
Well, they don't play rugby in Germany.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but soccer is huge. Which
It could have been hockey. You could have been ice hockey.
Now it would be. Soccer is huge in Germany. Everybody played it, which meant I didn't want to have anything to do with it. I always thought it'd be different. I've dabbled in everything from. I did play basketball, but not on a serious level. And you have to remember back then, not anymore. But back then in Germany, playing basketball, you played it by the books, which is a non-contact sport.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
We know that that's not the case.
No, that's our slang on it.
It's like, so I never had a chance.
It's brutal. It can be. I don't play basketball.
It can be.
I was on a court once. I got elbowed. That was, I went back to music.
Yep. That's exactly right.
I'm a combat sports guy. I love the martial arts and all the UFC stuff, MMA.
I have nothing but admiration for it. I think it's great.
That's what I say.
I ended up being a fencer. I was.
Well, you had reach. You had reach.
Yeah, I had to reach exactly, and so it's like that's what my my athletics of choice were. And I did pretty well with it as a junior.
You mentioned that your parents, obviously classical athletics, did they support you when you finally made the decision to go into full-time bass playing?
But did they support it?
Yeah, did they support it?
Okay, here was what it's great. I have a very my parents are both very cool, but my dad is really one thing that I've always admired was when we took a drive. This was in Phoenix. I was still in high school and about to enroll at ASU, and we had the talk. Where it was him and I sitting on the street.
What you want to do?
Yeah, and him just saying, she's like, "Look, I know you're very good, and I know this is what you want to do. But what do you think about learning a real job, and then have the funds to support your hobby as a bass player?"
Yeah, they call it a fallback.
Fallback or plan B.
Yeah, I'm not going to fall. But I'm not going to fall.
My answer was it was very straightforward. There was literally a conversation. Was, Dad, I am your son. I am just as stubborn as you are. I'm going to be a musician. I'm going to study music. In fact, I am going to study jazz performance. I will not even have a teaching degree to fall back on, so I better make it.
Wow. That's pretty badass.
And then, much to his credit, this is something I'll never forget. He said, right then and there, no discussion or anything. He knew it was a done deal when he saw one. And he said, "Okay, I tell you what, any school you can get into, I will pay for. After that, you're on your own." I said, "Fair enough, And
cool.
much to his credit, I ended up like for grad school at New England Conservatory. That was the most expensive conservatory in the world.
Wow.
Probably.
And he didn't bat an eye. He covered it and enabled me to do what I needed to do, to get the training that I needed. And that was that. And again, much to his credit, he did end up supporting me after school. He made it look like a loan until I get on my feet, and then forgave the loan. So it was just like, he's a very cool dude.
I'm going to ask a question. What instrument did your father play?
He didn't. He
didn't.
He always said he played turntable.
He played vinyl. He played vinyl back in the day.
Did he? You mean?
Yeah, he played We say turntables. He plays vinyl. He just pops vinyl on. Yeah, that's what we call turntablists. I used to be a DJ as well, so we always say, "Oh, you're playing vinyl. That's your instrument."
Vinyl. I see. Yes.
Yep.
Exactly.
Also, ironically, though, from our talks, Anthony's mother played vinyl, and it could have been the best education he had.
It was. It really, really, really was. Having the vinyl, yeah, because you hear all the stuff in the house. Look, you mentioned growing up in the house. Coming to America, of course, you heard the Beatles. What else influenced you? You mentioned the Beatles. You mentioned Elvis. What else influenced you as well? Outside of that,
to even add to that, when you ended up in Phoenix, Arizona, as a teenager, I mean, the cultural difference between where you came from and landing in Arizona and staying in Arizona, by the way.
Yeah.
What was the first thing that hit your ears and go, I think I want to play that?
Was that the high school big band with theme from Bonnie Miller? So I wasn't really a big listener. I mean, this is before, like I said, before internet, before cell phone, before all that stuff. So it was radio, and whatever was popular. But I started getting hip to people. First of all, it's like landing in Arizona after being in Germany was a culture shock like you wouldn't believe.
It had to be.
I believe that.
All of a sudden, I'm in the Wild West.
Literally, you're in the Wild West.
It was the Wild West. It was amazing, and so it was an experience for sure. I loved it, And when I ended up at the university, and you know how freshmen are, they all try to outdo each other. So it's just like, I know this bass player. It's like, have you ever heard of Stanley Clarke?
Right.
Oh yeah.
I said, oh yeah, Stanley. It's like, yeah, good. And go home. It said like try and find something on Stanley, and at that time it meant going to the record store or to the music library and to find a recording. And then somebody opted and says, yeah, but it's like on electric, you should check out this guy Jaco. I never heard of any of these guys. And then I remember my exposure to Jaco. I was a freshman in college. This is 1979 now. Okay, so Jaco has just published his first album, 76, and that Weather Report, and it's just starting to just blow up, And so I wanted that Jaco album. My mother got it for me, and because I didn't have money, I was a freshman in college, and she had it. I couldn't wait, and I said, "Mom, play it for me over the phone."
Oh wow!
Played it over the phone. I listened to it, and it was Donna Lee.
Wow! Yes, first song on the record.
Wow. It was just like, oh wow! It was like,
I'm not worthy. That's like an I'm not worthy moment.
Wow!
That's when you realize it's just like, I've got some work to do.
Yes.
And it was amazing. And my mom, I remember her. She's always very supportive. She always said, "Oh yes, you're the best. You can do it. All that stuff." Very, very supportive. But this time she said, "This guy really dances on the bass," and it was even clear to her.
Your mom noticed that back in the day.
Yeah. So it was really.
Your mom is a cool mom, like you said.
Yeah, that's cool, Mom.
They both have beautiful side. They're both very cool. Yes.
Also, being a teacher, as well as you're always a lifelong student when you play bass, is that like you said, that moment you heard Jocko and you realize I got work to do. And did that open up like a big wave of commitment that you were going to go further and deeper and darker into how to be a dancer on the bass, so to speak?
Yeah.
And do you see, like, sometimes you see that commitment? I know it's an electric bass, but sometimes you do or don't see that in other players, that you see they settle for this level they're at, and wherever they drift towards. But do you ever notice with the electric bass, there's always this pursuing of another realm of achievement?
Yes. I one of the things that I'm going to have to backtrack again to explain it. It's like one of the things that I realized is, like, when I got out of grad school, I ended New York, and I was able to play any groove, anything. I could. My chops were there, but I couldn't create my own bass lines, especially grooves. Okay, so when somebody said, "I want the smokiness grooves that you've got," I would go into my little book and see what I had transcribed, and I ended up thinking like, okay, this is going to have to improve, and I embarked on a research project of researching grooves. And in fact, my first book was originally entitled "In Search of the Groove." No, it was "In Search of the Groove," and it was self-published. I just found the elements important for a groove, and then I taught it, because I figured my purpose here is to advance bass. My purpose is to help advance the instrument. The way to do that is to teach what I know, and to make it easier for anybody willing to follow on that trajectory. So it was, I became a teacher because I wanted to advance the instrument. And so I've always been in this I've got work to do mode for either my students or myself. It's an ongoing thing. It's a lifelong thing. And I'm counting on them to pick up the torch and carry it on and pass it on. I think, and fortunately, the information exchange amongst bass players is phenomenal. It's wonderful. It seems to be a personality trait of people who play this instrument who say, hey, I just discovered this great fingering for Dorian 13th arpeggio. Let me show you. Great. It's not like some of the other instruments say, oh, I just discovered something. Yeah, I did.
and it's all mine.
You wish you'd know.
Something.
Didn't you get it?
New. I want you to give me $1 million for it. Otherwise, I'm holding it to chest.
Exactly. And so it's like it's for bass players, it's very special. It's really a special instrument. It's a special it's a special tribe. It's the way I see it.
Sure.
So yes, the ongoing work to do attitude is always there.
Well, it's funny, as Greg and I, we've always discussed, and you worked with Mike. You know Mike Pasquale as well.
I saw your interview with him. Yes, and yeah. And all that. Yes, that was the bass brunch. That was our bass brunch in New York City. Mm-hmm. It's like, I love these guys. Yes.
Yep, and he would always talk about how there's only one bass player on a gig. There can only be one bass player per gig at the time. So, and when you can have several in the room, then there becomes the exchange of information.
Yeah.
And, and then of course everyone parts ways. So you're, and I noticed in New York City, I can't speak for the West Coast, but I noticed in New York City, you're friendly, but you're also competing for the same jobs. You're competing for the same gigs. But at the same time, if you're a dickhead, they cast you out of the system. So it's like you got to be nice. You got to be courteous. I used to work with Jonathan Davis from Atlantic Starr. They have a song called Circles and Always and Secret Lovers. And I remember when he got me into it, he kind of became a mentor. He always says, you got to be likable. He goes, you got to be likable. He goes, you better be really, really talented like Prince. Unless you're like Prince or Michael Jackson. If you don't have that skill set, you need to be likable.
Yes, that is very, very true. And that is something that I've learned from my elders. When I came to New York, one of my heroes is Bill Lee. Okay, and the thing is when I got the contract to write bass guitar for dummies,
Yes.
then I was not known. I had taught some famous students and successfully, and I was known enough to be respected, but not enough to say, hey, this is like an awful lot of work. I don't want to really do this or something like that. Writing the For Dummies book was the hardest thing I've ever done. It was amazingly difficult. It took a year. I had lots of help, but it was amazingly difficult. Now, my thought was, all right, there are going to be a lot of people out there who are going to think, it's like, how come this guy gets to write this? Never mind he's got the pedigree and the background. So do I. Why him? English isn't even his native language, for Christ's sake,
He's coming from Germany.
Yeah, but music is universal, and I'm going to add Western music. It was somewhere in Europe before it came here. So
there you go. So
actually, I want to add on top of that, because you're speaking of forget the music part. Let's talk about the politics. The politics of being able to get the contract, and that's where people go, well, why not? Why me? Why not? Why not me? Why him? And can you add on to that?
Well, I got lucky. It's like one of my old students happened to be what was she? Well, she worked for a publishing. Something in publishing, I'm not quite sure, but anyway, a publishing agent, I think, a literary agent, and she knew somebody who was looking for somebody to write this book, and they pointed them into my direction. I said, great, like I said, it was a very hard thing, but one of the things that I realized I have to do is I was going to pour everything I had into this book, literally holding nothing back. And make it as thorough and as beneficial for all bass players as I can, and as timeless. Okay, but I needed it to get past that hump of where people say, "Who is this guy?" It's just like it's a dummies book. I'm not going to touch this. So I asked my friend Will Lee if he would write the foreword.
Wow.
And he's meticulous about it. He is somebody I admire greatly because he's got that skill set, and I'll get to that in just a second. To like, people love working with him. They love working with him. I can see why. I've seen him in many different situations. This guy is amazing. He's not just an amazing player. He's selfless. He's friendly. He's supportive. He's amazing. So he said, well, he didn't say yes right away. He said, well, let me read what you've got. So I sent him some sample chapters, and he says, yes, I like this. Let me write this. So he wrote a foreword, and I was so happy to get it. I submitted it, and then there was one editor that I didn't quite get along with the publisher. There were 6 editors altogether on the first book. One editor who was overseeing me, who I didn't get along with, and she futzed with his forward, and I was livid.
Wow.
And I mean, I was like ready for a knee-jerk reaction and letting her have it, but then I ran it by Will first. I said, Will, I just have to share this with you. This is what they've done. And this is what they've asked for. And if you don't want to do that, I totally understand it. I'm going to go too bad for you. And, instead of saying, yeah, man, it's just like, what are they thinking? This is my stuff,
You're interfering with my creativity.
Right. And what he said was just like, well, let's see what else we can do. Just like that. He was immediately looking.
Wow.
That's cool.
There was no ego. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. If there was one lesson I learned, and I learned many, but one of the most important lessons is just like the way he works and the way he handles situations like that. And that was, instead of this, you're wrong and I'm right, it was just like, well, let's see what we can do.
Maybe we can agree.
Yeah, and you always, it's like all of a sudden, if the other person feels like he or she is listened to, that changes the whole dynamic.
You can hear that in his playing, actually.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and so
Wow.
hugely beneficial. And you can tell people like that. Will is really a rare human being and bass player. He's just phenomenal in terms.
That's one of the reasons why he's still working.
The what?
That's one of the reasons why he's still working. That's one of the reasons why he's still wanted.
That's
I
right.
went to the Victor Wooten Bass Camp, and Chuck Rainey was there, and he was talking about how making yourself desirable for people, making yourself so that people want to have you. There were times where there'd be other musicians who would hear what he's making, and they'd say, "Well, I want to make what Chuck's making," and the producer would say, "Yeah, sure, I'll give it to you," but then they would never hire him ever again.
Yeah,
You would never get that call back.
yeah,
And then there were times where, what did Chuck Rainey say? He once said he didn't like working with Aretha Franklin because she didn't pay that well. But he said, my name's going on to Aretha's record, and we know that the record label is going to push it, therefore I get bigger and better and more jobs.
that's right.
So he goes, you have to know where to make that sacrifice, and you have to know where to actually just kind of shut up. What did he say? He goes, take it in the nuts, as he said at camp. Take it and then move on with it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's taking the long view of things. That's very important. He does well. Chuck Rainey is another sweet human being, wonderful bass player, just a legend. And I got to meet him and talk with him at one of the bass player live shows in New York City. Yeah. He's just a very heartfelt human being. Beautiful.
Yes, absolutely.
There's a video I watched before you came on, and you were at Gerald Vesey's bass camp, and you were on stage with Gerald and Michael Manring, and it was, I mean, it's pretty impressive, but to let alone have 4 bass players playing at the same time.
Yes.
And
knowing, you got a knowledge of bass. Everyone.
Oh, by the way, I want to say your solo. That wasn't, you were doing Come Together?
Yes, that was my arrangement.
I said
Your
that like
solo.
Anthony. Just
Yes. It was beautiful. Just so you know.
Thank you so much.
And there's a lot of what we would call staying in your lane.
Mm-hmm.
And when you decide to turn the wheel and really command the road, there's a lot going on, and like do you find that growing experience occurs when you talk about getting recognized? Was that a getting recognized moment for you?
That about being recognized, being welcomed into the fold, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is. It means a lot. It's something that you earn, and when people think you're ready, that's when it happens. It happens, but it happens naturally. If you stick it out long enough, the most important thing in this career is perseverance.
Yes.
Perseverance is the one thing that pulls you through. Being at it 5 years into it with nothing to show but still going for it. And then all of a sudden you're on the other side of it. That is such an important lesson for people to learn. Perseverance is the most important quality you can bring to the table, along with talent and all that stuff. But talent won't do you any good without perseverance. Knowledge won't do you any good without perseverance. It's like you need that thing, that lets you stick it out in the face of terrible odds. It doesn't matter, You have to be with it. You have to stay with it, and that is it. And in a place like New York City, that more than anything else would get you through.
You're absolutely correct. New York is definitely the home of if you don't cut it, they're gonna kick your ass out of the kicking your ass out of the city,
And then tell everybody.
and then tell everybody about it. Yeah, or completely dismiss you as if you didn't exist.
Yeah.
Or completely dismiss you with like, who's that guy? Oh yeah, that dude. And then
Yeah.
you kind of just move on from there.
They they know they may pretend you don't exist, but they know you're there. They know you're in the background. They know you're trying to get in, and they just let you.
Yep,
You know,
that's
'cause
true.
you'd water down the talent pool. It's like right,
Very aptly put.
right. Aptly put is right. It's pretty ruthless, but that's what it is. You really
Well,
you
in the Bronx, you'd call that a very Yankee attitude. You're either the best of the best, or you can go play for the Mets.
That's right. Oh, this is the other thing that that's good.
Yeah.
That you were bringing up an interesting point before, where we are all competing for that one chair in a band.
Yes.
And I think the thing for bass players is that bass players seem to have their own personality. You can tell usually who's on bass. You can tell if it's Pino Palladino, if it's Marcus Miller, if it's if it is Jaco. You can tell. And a lot of times people who look for a certain sound or they look for your sound, they really don't look for if they know their stuff, they don't look for a generic bass player. They look for somebody who can elevate this music to another level, you see? And that's why it is so important to find and develop your own voice. And that's what I do as a teacher. I don't try to make people sound like me or play like me or approach music like me. I show them the possibilities and I show them where I got it from. So all of my guys are listening to the original Motown recordings, not that were interpreted or that I've interpreted or anything like that. Stax Volts, same thing. You go down to the original.
Well, there was the book, the bass book of Standing in the Shadows of Motown, which was, and there's a lot of players that are on it, and there's a lot of people in the audience that refer to it. And just from my personal experience, it was given to me as a gift, and I'm reading it and I'm listening to it, and I'm going, well, why do I want to listen to somebody's version of something that was a masterpiece to begin with? Because they're altering the feel just by adding to it. They weren't there to make it, which is second generation anything. And it made me go back and start buying the records and the collections. And I didn't know, to me everything was James Jamerson. I didn't know there were 5 different players that were all being homogenized into the Motown sound. And whether it was Bob Babbitt or whoever, and it opened up technically a lot for me, but I knew that if I was going to play, I have to make my own. I can't be somebody else and try and be me. Yes, exactly.
That's the thing. It's just it's very interesting because yes, I mean James Jamerson was the main force. Motown sound, I believe, and he definitely brought this thing to another level. He is who I love to quote when somebody tells me in a studio or something,
tell
the bass player to simplify.
Yes.
And I say, bullshit.
They're all right. Yeah, that's the editor's job.
Didn't simplify. You wait until you hear what I'll do, and then you can tell me what you don't like. But don't come off right from the start. Simplify. Or I'll give you a dozen Motown recordings that have 14 16th notes in a measure, and see how you deal with that.
Sure.
All hits. So it's like working dynamics and all that stuff. For somebody who knows his stuff, you don't need instructions like you need to simplify or something, or do you need to stay below the 5th fret? Come on.
Okay.
Just to finish that point, though, do you think that the technology limit a lot of that? I mean, everybody was on a P bass
Yeah.
with labella flat wounds, and amplification was minimal compared to today, and that you had to fall in line with a lot of that tone construction.
Yes, yes and no, but the technological issue that really it comes into play is not necessarily like the type of amp or the type of bass that you played or anything like that. The issue really in the Motown era, and this is important, is that everybody, the whole band, they were in the same room recording the stuff at the same time.
First generation.
Each other. Absolutely.
Well, this is very true. Your first generation, right?
Chemistry, it's a chemistry, and there's something happening that is very unique to an ensemble. It's a performance. It happens in that precise moment, and that is the only time in the history of the world that this moment will be here, and this music will fit. You know, and everything else is just like how you can recreate it as much as possible,
but you're reflecting.
What you capture at that moment is the holy grail of whatever you're trying to achieve. And for that, you need to have a collective ensemble. It's everybody playing together. As a matter of fact, I would take it further. My last CD before I left New York was something called Soul of the City. It was supported by a grant from the New York Foundation for the Arts and all that stuff. And it was stories about New York put to music and words. Okay, so it was a real project. And the recording part of that project, I tried to emulate the Motown approach, which means the entire band was in the same room playing together, which means one person screws it up, we all do it again. You know, that's fine. I'm much happier getting that moment right, and even if it means tolerating a note that wasn't meant to be played, fine. And not only that, I took it a step further. I actually had an audience behind the glass wall that was comprised of my supporters, my fans, friends, people who came out to the shows, watched us play and stuff. And that kind of interaction, that kind of vibe,
that's cool.
It was a collective thing. It was, the audience was as much part of it as the players. And to me, that is something of a lost art these
100%.
days. Yeah, where they go like, okay, you fly out the bass track to LA, and then you have the drums in New York, and you just piece it together. But you're missing something. You're missing
everything, actually.
It sounds like the magic word would be energy.
Yes,
The fact that it brings the energy level up to the next level. Like nothing's better than having. You ever watch this is non sequitur from bass. You ever watch the Zildjian drum series? Any of the Zildjian drum series stuff?
What's that?
Zildjian drums, the cymbals. They would have a drum series where they bring people into the studio. They'd bring in all these Zildjian sponsored, these Zildjian endorsed drummers. And they'd have everyone wearing headphones, and they'd have incredible recordings of Skinny Puppy, Snarky Puppy was one of the bands that would back up a lot of these drummers. So it was just incredible to watch the responses from the people in the audience, vibing off the musicians in the recordings. It was incredible.
You see that on YouTube, where they always have these like isolated parts where you'll have like some drummer sitting in and he's playing to Asia to try and emulate what Steve Gadd's doing, and there's a lot of mimicry going on. But then again, you've got other things going on. There's, and just going back to what you were talking about, there's a version of if I ever lose this heaven by Verdine White, and he's got this drummer on it, John Paris, and you just hear him putting it all in there on the one take, and everyone's they're smiling, they're congratulating, they're doing this, but the seriousness of putting that track down for that big energy is it's priceless. Exactly what you said about the energy.
There's a whole clinic that I do that talks about studio versus stage. So it's like I have bass parts of famous bass tunes or famous tunes or famous bass parts that are played one way in the studio, and then another way live. So this is another lesson to be gleaned from this. It's like when somebody tells you, "I want you to sound exactly like the record," ignore them.
Yeah.
Because the record was a isolated studio thing, and now you're live. You're going to have to make up for a lot of the production stuff. You're going to have to fill in whatever you feel. The feel is different. The tempo is going to be slightly different. Look at the difference between Elvis's original Suspicious Minds
Yes.
versus the Hawaii live version.
Yes.
It's
This is true.
close.
Oh, the double the tempo.
Oh, not just that, but the whole part is just amazing. It's like an amazing part.
Carol Kay claims that one on the studio.
Okay.
And
Well,
but
was-
live it's Jerry Chef.
Yes, exactly. Yep. Yes, exactly. And I mean, they're both valid points. I mean, they're both hugely successful. I'm not going to argue with success.
But the interpretations.
The difference. I'm talking about just the difference between the two of them. It's like live is very different than the studio version. It's just that. It's just like they both have their purpose. They both have their audience. It may even like be the same audience to part. But live, a lot of times you must play different than in the studio.
I'll give you another Elvis one that I've been deep diving on because I saw the way that it is just recently is Eddie Rabbitt has 2 songs on that record. He's got Patch It Up, but he was also the author of Kentucky Rain. And Eddie Rabbitt, born in New York City, raised in New Jersey, suburbs, and ends up in Nashville writing Elvis hits, at a very young age. And you take a song like Kentucky Rain and you put your filter on it between the studio and the live, and they're both valid. But when you hear that song live, I mean, it's just it's experienced already. There's something different about how all the players are putting their. I mean, live, you got Ron Tudd on drums, you got Jerry Schiff, you got James Burton. You know what I'm saying? Whether he was on the original or not, but I want to ask a question because I am a fan. Is how is jazz going over in Dixie?
Okay, so you're talking about the South here.
I'm talking about you, and I'm talking about your new live gigs, and that's pretty much where I found you on Facebook, and that you've been promoting these jazz nights, and that you're building up in a club, and just from everything we have discussed, how's that taking root and going?
Wait, before you answer that question, answer that question first. Then we're going to go into your equipment and what you play as far as your instruments go. Okay. And then we're going to do with our final question, which will be inspiring other musicians and action.
Okay, cool. I moved during the pandemic. I moved to Wilmington, North Carolina, and I did so with a bit of trepidation. It's like it ended up being a very, very good move. It's a lovely place. And my teaching has gone all the way online. I cover 19 time zones in any given week.
Wow.
Between 11 and 19 countries. So I'm all over the world teaching via internet and gotten quite good at it because we have now access to technology that's just amazing. So it's a wonderful thing, but I was worried about the playing out part. Mm-hmm. Now I started going to jam sessions and met people here, and they're quite good. I have to say, and here's my take on it. The difference between Wilmington, which is a town of probably 140,000 people, and New York City, which is about 8 million, on the same area of land, is this. The musicians are just as good in one place. But the talent pool is not as big in Wilmington as it is in New York. In New York, you have a lot of people doing some really, really good stuff. A lot of them. Here, it's fewer, much, much fewer. But it's there, Now, here's the thing. about Wilmington that I really welcome. It's like New York has gotten very cynical. The real estate got so out of hand that club owners were really thinking about, okay, how am I going to afford this commercial rent and build up an office? They book half dozen bands, hoping to have enough of a turnover and have the band drink so that they can keep their doors open. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it certainly waters down the quality of the music. Here in Wilmington, what it is you have an amazing community of people who actually give a damn. They support each other. There are people here who are doing beautiful work. We're all into spreading the gospel of jazz. We are sometimes forsaking what we used to make just to break in another place that we can use as a jam session or a performance or something. And the amazing thing is, it is not just the audience that supports these venues, and they come out and they have a good time. It's like I play every last Wednesday of each month at a place called the Rusty Nail. And it's a Wednesday night. It's packed.
Wow, good for you.
Awesome. It's like people are coming out on a Wednesday night. I've never heard of a thing like that. This is great.
That's the question I'm asking.
And this is in Wilmington, North Carolina.
Exactly. And then, and not just that, but also the other musicians come down and they come and support you and pay the admission if there is one. In this case, there isn't even one. They tip. They do whatever they must to keep the jazz scene alive and keep it growing. And this is something I have missed in New York. It's a different place, but this is kind of what New York used to be.
You're also getting transplants also. Did you ever notice you're getting a lot of New York transplants showing up?
Well, yeah.
Just adding that.
They get absorbed into this culture. It's people are very kind here. So it's just that you can't just be a rough New Yorker. It's like people will let you know it's not cool.
They'll let you know.
So it's very cool. And then, but it's a really supportive community. It's really cool. It's what New York used to be when I first got there. I used to be in a hosting band at the Village Gate.
Oh wow!
And then it's now it then became a CVS store, and then I don't know what it is now. It was on Bleecker.
It's closed right now. It's a COVID. They got robbed clean last week.
Either a CVS or a Crate and Barrel. It's always one of those gentrified.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And here you still have these places, and people support them. So it's just that I'm doing my part as much as I can. I go out, support people, pay my admission. It's just like make sure that they see, okay, listen, we care. We're willing to spend our money here, however little it is or much or whatever, But it's like we're there. We're going to make this happen. And this is an awesome community for that. It's really a pleasure to be part of it. They have a jazz program at the university, which is University of North Carolina at Wilmington, UNCW. And they have a wonderful program there that really builds on that. It's just it's a little tough after the pandemic now that, it's like they're coming back with their talent, recruiting their talent, and building up the players again. Coming out of high school and all that stuff. So it's like,
I mean, jazz is taken seriously as an educational medium.
Absolutely. Yes, it is. Absolutely, yes. It's definitely taken seriously, and it's supported by good people. It's really a pleasure to be part of this. It's a pleasure and a privilege. I feel very fortunate to be part of this.
Awesome. What's in your hands? What is the bass?
What are you holding in your hands at this point?
What's that?
What's the bass that's in your hands? I know in your videos that you've been putting out, you put in both fretted and fretless.
Oh, that's an MTD.
It's an MTD. I play two types of basses. I play either MTDs or Foderas. I play only 6-string fretless basses because the instrument is so challenging that I have to work very hard to maintain it and to make it grow just on that one instrument. I used to double with upright and electric. I retired the upright a good 20 years ago,
Oh, wow.
just to solely concentrate on fretless six string. I do have a fretted MTD also, but I play and perform only on the six string fretless.
Oh, that's fretless.
Yeah, it's fretless.
Oh, that's got the that's fretless, but you have the lines.
You got the marks.
The marks are in there. Oh, cool. Because when
There
you
it
played that
is.
originally, I was listening to it, I was like, wait, that sounds like a fretless bass.
Anthony's hands, Patrick's hands they hold position, and you can laugh all you want. It's incredible to watch that the position of his playing is so precise that you can't tell that it's fretted or fretless.
No,
And
I don't know. Well, the sound gave it away. That's what the sound gave it away.
well, that's expression.
Yeah, but that's
It's like I used to play games, and it's just, if he hears this, I played for this guy in New York. I filled in for his son, which was Artie Reynolds, I think the third. The guy I played for was Artie Reynolds, and he had his agency in New York. And every now and then he called me in to sub because his son was on tour or something like that, or playing Obama's inauguration or whatever it was. And he hated fretless. He hated, yeah. He told me, she's like, look, I don't like fretless. Bring your fret. And I'd always say, sure, you know. And of course, me being me, I'd bring the fretless, you know. And I would play, and we'd play this. Disguise it as much as possible, and he'd never catch on. He'd never say, I'm playing a fretless, because he was just like I hate fretless, but he was just like, but this guy sounds good.
Yeah,
and
but this guy sounds good.
what kind of strings do you use?
I use DRs.
There you go.
Yeah.
Once again.
Yep, it's a solid.
Yeah, I have a DR string around my necklace. This is a DR string.
Yeah, I have to talk with those guys. It's a solid core string that I like. So it gives you. I just like that. I need a string that bites back a bit. You know, I like to play a lot of notes, and I need.
Which version of DRs are they?
Those are the high beams.
Okay.
High beams, they're good strings. They're really good.
Yeah,
nice.
Those are the high beams. Yeah, and I use them on all of my basses. I have the fretless. I have 3 fretless 6-string MPDs, and then 1 fretless 6-string Fodera, and then like I said, the fretted 6-string MTD. That one has MTD strings on it.
Awesome. Are you endorsed by MTD as well?
I am. I have an artist endorsement, thank goodness, from Michael Tobias. Yes, from MTD. I also have an endorsement from Fodera. It's a double endorsement.
Wow.
It is very
That's
lucky.
unusual.
Very unusual.
Very unusual. They were both extremely kind. They're both extremely wonderful instruments. They're both extremely wonderful people. And I was very upfront when I ended up getting the second endorsement, and much to everybody's credit, they approached me. Fodera approached me, and said, "We'd like for you to add one of our basses to your plate. We do not want to get in the way of you and what you have with."
That's cool,
dude. And it was amazing.
Oh my god.
They're just like, I mean, there are really some really good people in this business.
Yeah.
That was a Case for Bass exclusive right there.
And talk about stepping in shit. You did.
Well, you know,
That's awesome.
Patrick's an interesting player because you can listen to him and you can give him one listen and move on, you know, to watch other players. But I didn't do that. Yeah. Because he sets up a loop and he plays over the loop. Yeah. And what he starts assembling between the two parts is this. It's like he duets himself. He doesn't just pop in a loop. He's phrasing, and you can tell he's expanding and embellishing on the phrasing all over the fretboard on it.
Okay.
And after hearing what he just said about Federa, I could see why they would say that.
Why.
You can see why they'd say that, because
Yes.
he's using the different parts of the neck and all the different extensions and availability of notes that overlap on a 6-string, but he's using it in a way that's quite expressive to the instrument and the player.
Yes.
That anybody listening to it who knows what they're listening to is going, I'm not doing that.
All right, very cool. Let's go into amplification.
Amplification, Patrick. What are you using?
Okay, on my amplifiers, and this is another endorsement. I have Phil Jones bass equipment.
Ooh.
And I have to say, with that, what happened was, it's great. What happened was this: it's like I know Michael Albronda, and nice cat. He was part of the bass brunch with Michael Visaglia, and all the other guys, and I was looking at this stuff, and I was looking at the size of it and the small speakers, and I'm thinking, man, there's no way this works. There's
something wrong here.
I'm thinking, string fretted. I need articulation. It's like these guys can't handle that. So I figured, I kept coming across it, but I knew I would probably just I asked Michael, and he'd say, "Hey, take one, try it out, and then let me know how you think it." He would have given me one back then. I want to be in a situation where we're in the same circles, and then he'd ask me at bass brunch and say, "Hey, Pfeiffer, how do you like that amp?" And then I'd say, "Oh man, it sucked." And then I'd say, like, if I'd had to lie, and I'd say, "Oh man, best things than sliced bread.
Greatest thing I ever played."
It sucks, and I say, "Oh, Pfeiffer is an asshole."
You're gone out of here.
What I did was, like every other cat, I went anonymously. I went onto Amazon. I bought the 2x4, the whatever it is, and I figured, there's no way I'm going to regret it. But heck, it's affordable enough to where I can bite the bullet, without getting into trouble. I played through it. I was absolutely blown away. The articulation, the sound. I was able to rehearse with my fusion band in New York, which is a 5-piece. It was pretty much maxed out, but that amp was able to carry it. Carry the bass.
That's what people say who own them. They're
awesome.
Absolutely amazing. It's just that I really am. I was just like thoroughly stunned. So then I made the call, and then I said, "Hey, Michael, I like your stuff. I wanted to see if it would be possible for me to get some." I was looking for an artist endorsement where you pay basically the cost of the equipment. A lot of people said that endorsement.
That's actually what I have.
Yeah, that's the usual.
Yeah, for the cost.
And they were awesome. Michael just said, "Hey, listen, basically stay on the line. I'm going to get my guy on it from the company." So we had a conference call, and I told him, and he said, "It's like, okay, so what are you looking for?" And I said, "Well, I see this thing. Say you have the BP 800. I love that one, and then you have the 4x8, and then a 4x5, I think, and then you have the C4, and then the C8. I think those three, that would be great. It's like that would be my dream." And the guy would go, that's a great list, but I think you should also have. And then okay, sure, that sounds great.
That's awesome.
It includes the interface and the 1x the nano bass. And this stuff is just phenomenal. It's just really good. So I am, every time I'm playing out, and I have a big sound because of the 6 strings and all that. But people, I always get comments. They're looking at the gear and they're going like,
"It's so small.
How did that happen?" Is that these speakers are like, they're so small. What? How did you do that? It's just like, well, you know what? This guy knows what he's doing, because the frequency response goes down to 20 hertz.
Oh,
awesome.
I have 30.
You need that.
All right.
But I need that extra.
You need it.
And you need it because of all the low tone with the 6 strings. All right. My final question to you is this: what do you tell an aspiring musician, someone who wants to come up the ranks? Because you obviously, like you mentioned earlier, being persistent. You're in the background. They know you're there. They may act as if you're not there, but they know you're there. and then you have your aspiring musicians. What's the word of advice you would give to them?
What would be what? I'm sorry, run that by me again.
Piece of advice to young
A
players.
piece of advice to young players, young up and coming players who want to break into the business. What would you tell them?
What would I tell them? Boy, but first and foremost, you gotta have your chops together. And there's no learning. You gotta be technically absolutely proficient to play what you hear, and then develop your voice. Okay, and I think that is very important, and that's overlooked. Everybody looks like, oh, I want to play like such and such, or I want to play like this person. You can emulate somebody, but it's like copying them won't do you any good because that's been done. So find your own voice and find it in a way that supports the music you want to play. Don't be afraid to bring a 6-string fretless bass to a pop gig. It can work. It can work very well. In fact, it can open up another avenue, But you want to be someone who is recognizable without being overbearing. And then the other thing is have respect for the musicians, have respect for the music, have respect for everybody around you, and be open, be easy to work with.
Cool. Awesome, dude. Words of advice from Patrick Pfeiffer, professional bass player, clinician,
Patrick,
author.
this is fantastic. Thank you
great,
for coming on. Thank you for agreeing and talking.
No,
and
we're very happy
opening up
about that.
about everything you've been through and what you got and where you're going. And
thank you. We appreciate that.
Oh, very much. Well, thank you very much for having this show and making it accessible for players and especially the younger cats. It's like it gives us a chance to pass on the stuff that we've had to learn sometimes the hard way. And anytime I can level the road just a little bit for the next cat, I'll be happy to do this. So I'm very grateful to you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.